Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Taos, Baltimore. We are Baltimore Positive. We have a new head coach in Owings Mills. We're going to be discussing that with Luke Jones. We're going to be getting the Maryland Crab Cake Tour after the storm. We hope you're with us. We're going to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Ravens championship on Wednesday. I'm going to have some guests from the Super Bowl 35 team, but also just a lot of archival things. So if you're out during the snowstorm, you click listen live at Baltimore Positive. Somehow, if you're driving, I hope you're not, or if you're home and you have a radio, put it on. And obviously, out at the front of Baltimore Positive, dozens, maybe as many as 100 pieces with Tony Siragusa, Shannon Sharp, Brian Billick, Marvin, Rex Ryan, all down the line. We will be celebrating the 25th anniversary of that. Before I bring Luke in, before we talk about Jesse Minter, and you can find more at Baltimore Positive. If you're on the WNST tech service, you know you got it timely on Thursday night. Maybe you didn't on AT&T, but we sent it out on time. And he's 5 o'clock. Chad Steele and Sashi, they love 5:01. Give it to BAL. We'll put it on the website at 5 o'clock. It'll be a 5 o'clock thing. I lost a friend on Thursday afternoon. I mean, Thursday was such a crazy day, just in general with Jack Smith and January 6th. And I know deniers in my life, and it really angers me. I'm with the Dropkick Murphys on this one. I don't like Nazis. Just me. Just speaking for as a Venezuelan. But we lost a friend. I lost Michael Bronfine, and this happened moments after the hiring of Jesse Minter. Michael was the founder of Curio Wellness and Foreign Daughter and Neighbor Care and a whole bunch of other things. You've heard his daughter, Wendy, on the show. He has been on my show with Gina Schock discussing cannabis and discussing the plant, discussing Schedule 1 and legalism, all of those things. But he's just a great guy and a local guy and a Caves guy and one of the people that put the PGA tour at Caves and helped out and hosted me. And beyond that, just I don't know. I'm going to share the piece. Just a wonderful guy to talk to and a super smart guy and a guy that I'm just going to miss. So I just wanted to throw that out. I'm wearing my Curio shirt. Ideally, Luke, and there was no bigger Raven fan than Michael Bronfine. Ideally, this is a Curio O, but it looks a little bit like a Lamar 8. And it's crazy that in the aftermath of the Minter thing, and we're going to talk Minter, really the big thing is what's going to change and is Lamar happy? And this thing all kind of happened quickly and with the snowstorm coming. I don't even know if there's a press conference because I don't get Chad Steele's email. So is there a press conference, Luke, if they scheduled such a thing?
It's scheduled for next Thursday. So basically a week from which I'll be totally honest, as much as it's great to, build on the momentum, so to speak, in terms of hearing from the coach directly, I kind of like that because it now gives them a week. First of all, not trying to drive through 1.5 feet of snow or however much is ultimately going to fall on, by Monday. But I think gives you a chance to let the staff crystallize a little bit in terms of who's going to be the offensive coordinator, who's going to be the defensive coordinator. Is Jesse Minter going to call plays, which that's my assumption at this point in time on the defensive side of the ball. Does that mean Chris Horton, who obviously knows Jesse Minter, is going to stay as special teams coordinator? So it kind of gives you that a little bit of time for that to crystallize a little bit.
You're not going to have to ask him a bunch of questions that are going to be answered by next Thursday anyway,
right,
in regard to his staff, in regard to all of that. He's going to sit through a snowstorm and get this done from LA, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, however it works out. But yeah, I mean, you obviously have Zoom, you have cell phones, all of that. So you can do all that, those kinds of things a little more easily. And I think it's notable that the Ravens even, they conducted their second interview with Joe Brady on Thursday, the same day that they hired Minter. I'm wondering how much of that was asking Joe Brady about being a head coach and how much of that was, what do you think of Jesse Minter and what would you think about being the offensive coordinator here, right? So, he's one name. Cliff Kingsbury's been tossed around a lot. There's been chatter. There have been reports. I know Diana Rossini even mentioned that Lamar Jackson would be excited about working with someone like Cliff Kingsbury, and other players vouched for someone like him who would bring an offense that, we didn't necessarily think of Todd Monken as an air raid offense, but more similarities than you think. So I think all of those questions, which are the natural next questions, we're going to talk about Minter still, but what's next in terms of his staff? Those are the natural questions because, well, you have an MVP quarterback that you're hoping to reinvigorate. You're hoping to rejuvenate an offense that was incredible in 2024 and took a step or two back this past year. There's no question about it, regardless of the reasons why. And it wasn't all Todd Monken, it wasn't all Lamar Jackson's health.
Well,
It
when
wasn't
Lamar Jackson was healthy, the Monken offense worked.
yeah, it wasn't perfect at the beginning of the year, but they were scoring a lot of points.
Let's be honest, man. Todd Monken, of all the dudes we've had around here that drew it up, probably rough around the edges for Lamar, and certainly it felt that way to me, even in the press conferences, that he was really a throwback ball coach. I mean, he seemed
it's
like the
fair.
guy that would have funny socks and a whistle, and like be a commercial kind of thing in the modern get off my lawn old guy kind of way. But scheme and getting guys open and taking advantage of Zay Flowers and taking advantage of Derrick Henry with a crappy offensive line. I could use a worse word for that, right? And with guys that, quite frankly, dropped the effing ball or got stripped or got fumbled or got turned over. I mean, Derrick Henry had a fumbling problem here. Zay Flowers has a fumbling problem. Mark Andrews has a drop problem. Bateman has a problem. Isaiah Likely. I mean, these all are people who caught balls in Todd Monken's offense with Lamar Jackson's arm, with John Harbaugh's leadership, with bad offensive line play for the most part. And, you know, they're all unemployed. Harbaugh got a raise, and we don't even know if Lamar's happy or not. But I look at it on the outside now that it's over with in the bubble and look at it and say, might be the players dropping the ball, not the coaching, or the personalities, or we lost by 3 points again because our defense bled 17 points in the last 6 minutes of a game on the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely fair, and it's not for me. It's not either or. It's not just one thing. It's never just one
Well,
thing.
that's how the coach got fired.
Yeah, but that's where you go back to, and we talked about the same thing with Brandon Hyde last year with the Orioles, right? I mean, he can't fire the entire roster, so the coach tends to take the fall. And how much of that is fair sometimes, I mean, it's up for debate. But I think, and I would wholeheartedly agree with you. To me, the message for everyone who's left behind, and I'd throw Eric DeCosta in there, right? I mean, the general manager and how the roster was built, where you look at this and say, okay, you found Jesse Minter, universally being praised. I mean, look around the league. I mean, not just guys that were in Los Angeles like Derwin James. I even saw someone pulled a clip from Travis Kelce's podcast and was talking about how impressive the Chargers defense was in some spots when they faced Kansas City. I mean, when you're getting praise from opponents, that's saying something.
I don't know that I can name 4 guys on the Chargers defense, right?
Well, I mean, Derwin James is a great player.
Right. Okay.
Khalil Mack,
Is
whatever he is now, he's a guy that's going to be.
He's on the other side of Roquan Smith. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of go down the list, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that you point to is you look at the previous regime in LA with the Chargers, and it's not as though they didn't have high expectations a few years ago. But what happened with that defense? I mean, it was a major, major problem. And from the time that Minter arrived, they got
better.
They
had Bosa, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, again, it's not like they were completely devoid of talent, but you looked at areas of that football team, and it wasn't necessarily like you're thinking it's the 2000 Ravens or anything like that. But you look at how consistent they were this past year. Like, okay, did they get have they gotten the acclaim this year of, say, Denver? No. Or Houston? No. But go look at their stats. They were top 10 in basically everything. I'm not just saying total defense, not just saying scoring defense, not just saying run defense, pass defense, but third down defense, red zone defense. If you're an analytics nerd like me, EPA, DVOA, they were top 10 in everything, like just rock solid, good to great in everything. And to your point, you look at that defensive roster, and it's not as though they had all pros at every single position or they spent a ton of money at every single position. So I think you're looking at that, that element of Jesse Minter coming in that you're excited about. One thing I wanted to point out to you, and as we did our opening segment on this, you kind of left off with the question of what's going to change here? What's going to be different here? And we obviously got into the fact that Jesse Minter's worked for both Harbaughs, and of course, I pointed out to you that just because you work for someone doesn't mean you're exactly like that. We used our working relationship as an example of that, as far as personalities and differences and all that. And that's not, it's not a good or bad thing. It's just how it is. But
I'd fight with you right now, but I'm eating a cookie. Thank you, Yas.
but
It looks like I got cocaine on my face. I assure you, it's powdered sugar.
But I heard Kyle Van Noy say something interesting recently. And it's so funny because as we get older, we tend to, in life, I'm not even talking just football or sports, but in life, we tend to talk down about younger generations. But Kyle Van Noy, who's in his mid 30s, made the interesting observation that he's found as he's gotten older and he's seen young players come into the league, that there's been a growing trend of guys that are way more about the why and the how rather than, you give impassioned speeches. And I don't even think like he was saying this as a shot at John Harbaugh. I think it was just the way that you think about how you used to perceive a head coach compared to what you're seeing now.
Well, that
And
video of Harbaugh dancing like the oldest white guy ever in the locker room and Zay Flowers and like that, that's all the big trust and that's all the rah, 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 shish boom bah. I'm your daddy. I'm your big bro. We're family. We're family, family. I don't
which
know these guys know from family when they've been from Texas Tech to Florida to Georgia because they got paid another 20 grand to go play their freshman year one place, their sophomore year another place for a bunch of whores who wind up being Tommy Tuberville. You know what I mean? Like, or what's the clown that just took the job at LSU? Like, they just wind up on this pathway of I'm a businessman. Dion, I'm a businessman. And I don't know that they need all of that collegiate rah-rah shit. You know what I mean? They just pay me.
I
Just pay me. I
I
mean,
think
I,
all
I would see it's different than it was with Tony Siragusa and with the guys that I'm buddying around with this week for Super Bowl 35. They had a different mindset than Zay Flowers. I did this
They
did.
might have. They might have. But I would say, look, there's still a time and a place for that. And one thing we'll get into with Jesse Minter that, one of my questions from afar from him was not unique from Mike McDonald, was how do you command a room? How do you communicate? Are you in
Authentic.
charge, right? Are you in charge? Are you comfortable being in charge? Whereas, you kind of, what few memories I had of Jesse Minter, like I said, very limited. He was very low on the totem pole when he was in Baltimore, at least from a front-facing standpoint, right? But that was a question because he was on the quieter side. And Mike McDonald was the same way. When Mike McDonald first started having a once or twice a year press conference when he was the Ravens linebackers coach, and we're talking way back at this point in time, he was never someone where you came away from it like, oh my gosh, that guy's 1000% going to be a head coach one day. You thought he was smart. You could
You
tell he knew
always
what he
think they're
was doing.
smart. That's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
first thing I learned about
yeah,
this 30 years ago when I
but
met Marvin Lewis and Jim Schwartz, and they're running me around and introducing me to young coaches and young scout Eric DaCosta.
right.
Smart people, really smart people, all of
No,
them.
no doubt. But I think there's that part of it, but there's also the emotional intelligence part and how do you connect with players. So that rah-rah stuff, there's still a place for it. Like this is not at all saying that players don't need that, but I think there's also something to be said then when things aren't going well or you have to make adjustments. What are you bringing to the table?
The
I'll
way
give you
you're
a
going to win the game, and
I'll
this
give
was
you a
very
perfect
Marvin for me, was it's going to be the play. It's not going to be our feelings. It's not
sure,
what somebody
sure.
said on the radio
So
about you or what the fans are yelling. It's going to be the execution. It's going to be alignment, assignment, and technique, and that's it. It's nothing else. And can you get there? And do you know where you're supposed to be? And can you make the play when you get there? And
and that's what more and that's
and
what
it's not about
players
your girlfriend. It's not about problems at home. It's not about any of that. So as much as we talk about all of that in that moment, in that 6 seconds in the play, knowing all of that and working as a unit, that's where you try to rein it all in. But that humanity gets in the way. Feelings, I mean, we talk a lot about
question.
that. Injuries get in the way. A lot of that confusion gets in the way, right?
Yeah, but I'll give you an example that many Ravens fans maybe have forgotten about because it's hard to believe it's been 20 years, but what did Brian Billick do in the midst of the 2006 season?
He took over the offense, right?
Because they were having an issue.
Yeah.
And you had an offensive minded head coach who was able to do that. Now, it didn't result in the Ravens winning the Super Bowl. And that wasn't a long term solution per se, but it helped. It helped in the moment. And it led to the Ravens at that point in time having the best regular season in their history, win loss wise. So, fast forward to today, Kyle Van Noy was making the point that players today really want to be coached from an X's and O's standpoint more than ever. And it's not to say that rah rah is wrong or that there's not the emotional intelligence part. I mean, all you've heard from former players is how much they love Jesse Minter. I mean, I think Derwin James called him an alpha, and just guys just talking about he's the total package. Eric Weddle, who is someone that I have a great respect for his time in Baltimore, just knowing how much he knows football. The idea that he knows football, he knows what makes a good coach, he knows what's going to make you successful. He flat out said point blank that the Ravens are that Minter's going to be to the Ravens what McDonald is in Seattle right now. So I thought that was interesting, but it comes down to this, and I used the Billick example in 2006. I mean, when things start to go awry, and you mentioned, the example of Harbaugh dancing in the locker room, like everyone's happy and excited and kumbaya when you're winning, right? But we also know that it's not always going to go that way. You're going to have times where things get rough. 2025 was a perfect example of that. How much wherewithal, and look, when I say this, it doesn't mean John Harbaugh doesn't know football. John Harbaugh knows more football on his pinky nail than you and I will ever know. But at that level, when the bullets are flying and when things are going rough, your defense is awful, your offense is maddening in terms of its inconsistency, as 2025 was the case. What are you bringing to the table as a head coach to help fix that? And I don't think I don't necessarily perceive that as being Harbaugh's fatal flaw. I think a lot of this was just the buildup of multiple years of frustration and 18 years and shelf life and the idea and opportunity for a new voice. And Steve Bisciotti made his decision. But I think in this case now with Jesse Minter, you are bringing someone in who has the respect of players at previous stops, has familiarity with this organization. One thing that I didn't necessarily emphasize a whole lot in our first conversation, but if you recall, when Dean Pease retired at the first time before he came out of retirement elsewhere, but when he retired as Ravens defensive coordinator, they promoted Wink Martindale. But there was a big emphasis over the course of that offseason to basically revamp and rebuild their defensive system. One perception of Dean Pease's defensive system at that point in time, the Ravens system in 2017, was that it was complicated. And I think what they wanted to do was to continue to have it look complicated to the opposition and make it difficult to decipher and difficult to play against. However, to make it easier to teach internally and to make it easier for their players to learn the system. So they went to work. And you want to know who two of the biggest names that were involved in doing that behind the scenes? It was Mike Macdonald and Jesse Minter. So it speaks to, even at that point in time when he was not one of their highest profile assistants, nor was Mike Macdonald in 2017, 2018, but it speaks to what kind of football intelligence those two have. And,
well, coach's kid. We haven't said that in the segment
right,
yet.
Exactly. I mean, like, and
his dad is the one that gave John Harbaugh and Rex Ryan a hand up in life.
I don't
right?
know if you had a chance to see it, and I understand it's behind a paywall, but I assume there was a Chargers writer because this was written last season. I think it was written during training camp or early September, something like that. They did a profile on Jesse Minter. It is amazing. And look, I don't want to inflate this because this tends to be the case with football coaches. The networking is incredible. The people you meet along the way is incredible. It's very much a small world kind of mindset. But the amount of networking and people that he encountered along the way, like for example, Mike Tomlin and him are close. Tomlin was on, I forget which staff it was at one point in time, knew Jesse Minter as a kid. and has kept tabs on him and would ask him how things are doing, whether he's talking about like, his high school team, college team, all that kind of stuff. So that just speaks to, okay, yes, he worked for John Harbaugh, and yes, he worked for Jim Harbaugh, but you're also talking about someone who worked in college. His father was a coach, was at some different places, and just really has a football resume for a 42-year-old who's never been a head coach. That still speaks to you.
Tomlin was the defensive backs coach at Cincinnati.
Yes, that's
in
what it was.
1999 and 2000.
Yeah, yes.
Right before he went to Tampa, his last stop
Exactly.
in college sports was in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so he knew a young Jesse Minter and took a liking to him, to the point where I think the Chargers and the Steelers played. What, this was it this year or last
1999,
year?
he's your age. He would have been 16 years old. He's literally Jesse Minter is your age. So
yeah. So but the point with that is, I mean, he's clearly someone that even at a young age, he made an impression on people, right? I mean, even if I'm not saying Mike Tomlin identified him in his youth as, oh man, you're going to be an NFL head coach one day, but clearly he was the son of a ball coach and had an interest in it. Originally was just going to coach in college, and then
he was a player as a 16-year-old.
Yeah,
he was a kid who played ball. Yeah.
But originally he was going to coach in college, for his dad, and then he had a change of heart that he wanted to play still. So he ended up playing some college ball, and right. So, but he was at Notre Dame, he was at Cincinnati, he was at Indiana State, Georgia State. Comes to the Ravens in an entry level kind of position. Not different from Mike McDonald in that way.
This is Harbaugh getting a call from Rick Minter saying my kid needs a gig.
Exactly.
Literally, that's it. I mean,
yeah. And
that's what led him to getting this gig this week that you're going to go out to this press conference and I'm going to watch on the video.
Yeah. So but there's a pedigree there that, look, it's not a pedigree in terms of point blank. Do I know for a fact that Jesse Minter is going to be a great head coach? No. It's
people ask me if I like the hiring. I'm like, they like the hiring, and they clearly don't want to change much. And I guess, at the end, we haven't even discussed that, but Luke Jones is here. He's Baltimore. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back in, and we'll talk more about this, because I know you wanted to take a deeper dive into what's really going to change, right? I mean, that's going to really be the question line next week, right?
Yeah, I'll kind of go back to what I said before. I don't think the Ravens are were ever looking to turn the organization upside down.
Fair enough.
So what can you tweak? What can you change? What can you perfect? First on the list in terms of what Jesse Minter X's and O's wise will bring is to improve the defense. But the next question, and that's where maybe we'll dive into it a little more, because this will be wildly important. Who is his offensive coordinator going to be? Who is going to be on his staff? Who might he hire as an experienced voice in the room because he is a first-time head coach? Think of, I don't know, Cam Cameron coming in when John Harbaugh became the head coach, and what that meant for John Harbaugh in that way. So I think those are the fascinating questions that come next, and we could talk about that.
Luke Jones is here. He's Baltimore Luke. We have a new head coach. We have a storm coming. We have a cup of Super Bowl coming, brought to you by the Maryland Lottery. We'll have candy cane cash, scratch-offs to give away. Our friends at GBMC also putting us out on the road. The schedule is set. We're going to be at Fadley's on Monday. We've moved Tuesday from State Fair all the way across the street to El Guapo. We're going to be over at El Guapo, where they were vandalized a couple of weeks ago. And you know what? It's a cup of soup or bowl. And Luke, you don't know this, but the Pozzol over at, oh my God, El Guapo. So I'm going to have serious chicken tortilla soup on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to be at Coco's in Lauraville. Thursday, we're going to be at Pizza John's in Essex. I'm really looking forward to that. Some of my childhood friends are coming by for that one, so that's going to be great too. And then on Friday, we're going to wrap things up Super Bowl week for a cup of soup or bowl for the Maryland Food Bank at Costas in Timonium. Luke's here. I'm here. We're going to talk about Jesse Minter, Rick Minter, minting a new Ravens way in Owings Mills. We are WNST AM 1570. Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking. Baltimore positive.